Gewaltig. Zogt the Heilige Gemara. We're on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, and we're 5 lines from the bottom. The very first word on the line, Amar Abaye. Shemamina. We learn from here that we saw that if you take a brick that's 3 tefachim and you cut it in half, and now you have 2 half bricks, you're going to put a filling in between these 2 bricks that will each be a tefach. So Shemamina, kol beinei urvei tefach. The amount of cement you put in between these 2 half bricks is a full tefach, and that's where the cheshbon is. The block of 3 tefachim was split into 2 blocks of a tefach and a half, which is a total of 3, plus the tefach, a filling of cement in between, makes it a footprint of 4 tefach. Zok Abaye, hanamila betina. Where is 1 tefach of cement enough if it's actual cement? But if they filled it with crushed stone and some adhesive, that's not as structurally sound. It would require more than just a tefach. The Ikadami, there are those who say the tefach is needed. Hanamili berichsa. The reason why you need a tefach is because it's richsa. It's not as good of an adhesive. Batina, if you use actual cement, like boy kolahai, you would be able to use even less than a tefach. Zok Gemara. So basically, what you're telling me is, remember the begozes, the chol dalet ames goiva. The begozes kol dalet ames goiva. You have a putzia chamisha koi. By the stone that we call the gozes, which was a stone that had already been smoothed out, and it only needs a footprint of 5 tefachim, it's safe to build a wall that has the thickness of a base of 5 tefachim. You could build a wall that's 8 amas, approximately 4 amas, approximately 8 feet. That is the amount of structure you need, and that would be the ratio of base to height would be 5 tvachim to 4 amas. Kumtachais, Eloi, loikai. But if you have less of a foundation, the wall won't stand. And that's why the neighbors can demand of each other to donate half of that amount required for the thickness of the wall. The problem is, I'm going to show you elsewhere that a smaller footprint can handle a much taller wall. Because via Amatraxin, we know that in the Beis HaMikdash, the first Beis HaMikdash, in between the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kodeshim, there was a block wall that was the height of the Heichel, which was 30 amas high. You know how wide the foundation was, how wide this wall was? That the Gavoya Talson Amsa will have a Pusya Elishish Pishki. It was only 1 amma. It was an Amatraxin. It was 1 amma. So 1 amma is 6 tvachim. So 5 tvachim, you're saying, can only do 4 amas. 5 tvachim could only do 4 amas, but 6 tvachim could do 30 amas. That sounds like a lot. And that wall stood for 410 years. It's not a linear equation. You don't say 5 could do 4 amas and 6 could do proportionally more than that, maybe 6 or 7 amas. No. Kiva the Ika Tepach Yisera, that makes a huge difference. Once you go from 4 to 5, there's a huge jump in the stability of such a wall, and therefore, Kiva the Ika Tepach Yisera Koi, you could actually support even a wall of 30 amas high. Frekt Gemara, if a foundation of 1 amma of 6 tvachim is so sturdy that you could build a really high wall upon it, well then uvamikdash sheni, my time of it amatraction. In the Beis HaMikdash Sheni, they didn't build a wall. It wasn't stable. It was too big. So they used curtains. Why did they use curtains? They could have built the wall. You see clearly here from our Gemara that a wall that has a depth of 6 tvachim is very sturdy. So Dr. Gemara, yes, it's sturdy, but there's a limit to that. Ki kai betlasen kai. If it's an amma wide the wall, it can handle and be sturdy up to 30 amas high. But fei, way higher than that, you can't. And the Beis HaMikdash Sheni was 100 amas high. And therefore, loy kai, 30 is the cutoff. How do you know that the Beis HaMikdash Sheni was actually taller than the Beis HaMikdash? The second Beis HaMikdash, its covet is going to be greater than the Bayis Rishon. And Rabbi Shmuel, one says it's referring to the size of the room. It was much bigger, which supports what we're discussing. And one set it means it lasted longer, meaning instead of the Beis HaMikdash Rishon, which only lasted 410 years, the Beis HaMikdash Sheni lasted 420 years. Now we are on Daf Gimel Amud Beis. And the V'Isala, and they're both true. In fact, the second Beis HaMikdash was physically much larger, but it also lasted longer. We do agree that a wall that is a amma thick can survive up to 30 amas. So at least even in the second Beis HaMikdash, it should have made 30 amas of stone wall. The idich navet proiches, and then the part above that from 30 to 100, that we understand would have been done with a proiches. But why did we abandon the wall? We should have.
The weekend is a long weekend.
Zog to Gemara, Ki Koi, Tulsa Mosa, even the 30 amas that we say in the first Beis HaMikdash, the wall was sturdy for, that's because Nami Agav Tikru Maziva. The top of the wall was also fastened down. It was fastened to the roof. So it had extra structure up there as well to give it its stableness, its rigidity. And that's why it survived. But here, Kai B'loi Tikru Maziva, I'm sorry, in the first Beis HaMikdash, Kikai Tlasna Masa Nami Agav Tikru Maziva Avakai. But B'loi Tikru Maziva. But if you want to just put up a wall that's 30 amas high, but it doesn't reach the top, like in the second Beis HaMikdash, Lo Havakai, there 30 amas wouldn't have been stable because you needed to be anchored on top as well. So more okay. So they couldn't have made it 30 amas high, but at least they could have made the wall part of the height. Whatever they would assess that a wall that's an amma thick can be stably high, that's how high they should have made it. And the rest could have been a paroiches. Amar Abaye, you don't go halfway. Gemiri, we learned ikulu binyan. In the first Beis HaMikdash, we see it was all stone wall. Ikulu paroiches, like we saw in the Mashkin. So that's all we know. Ikulu binyan is b'mikdash. Ikulu paroiches is b'mishkan. But you can't. We don't have any makar to make a wall half and half. The Baltic. Zok to Gemara. In our days, when people build a house out of bricks, it's the raw brick that we see. But in those days, they didn't leave the raw brick exposed. They actually smeared the raw brick with a layer of sid. So we haven't discussed the layer of sid, which will actually make a brick that's 5 tvachim. It'll actually make it a little longer because you have to add a little layer of sid. So the Gemara wants to know, when the Mishnah gave a shear of 5 tvachim for a wall made out of gozes, does that mean Hein v'sidon? Does that mean with the shmir it's the 5 tvachim, meaning the actual block is a little bit less than 5 tvachim, but if you add the sid to it, the total outside dimension would end up being 5 tvachim. Or maybe the brick alone is 5 tvachim, but in fact you have to give even more space because we're going to still be adding a little bit extra for the sid on either side. This far is to say that the shear included the sid, meaning the actual brick was a little bit smaller. If you're going to say that the Mishnah is only talking about the length of the brick, but really you needed to leave more space because there's sid as well, shouldn't the Mishnah say that? We're talking about how much space each side has to contribute to the construction of the wall. We must be that hein v'sidon. The shear of the Gemara is actually the actual shear of how much you have to leave, which means it includes the space of the sid, which means the actual brick was small. So you don't have a right. So why doesn't the Torah tell us it's a tevach and it's 5 tvachim and a bit? Because the Tana is only talking about full tvachim. The little bits is not what the Tana addresses. Correct, Gemara. What do you mean? You do find the Tana addresses part of a tefach because vatnan b'leveinin zeh noisen tefach u'mechza v'zeh noisen tefach u'mechza. So you see the Tana does address part of a tefach. When you have the 2 bricks that together form 3 tvachim, yeah, that's what the Mishnah will address. But the final shear, the Mishnah only addresses full tvachim, not fractions. Tashma. Let's see if we can bring a raya. We know that if someone made an erev in a mavi, so now the mavi is like a Rosh Hashanah. You have to make some type of sign and signal indication when you're coming from a Shusharabim into the Movli or the other way, it has to be noticeable to the people that there's a line over here. They have to be careful not to carry past this line. So they would have to put up a koira, a beam, a horizontal beam across the top of the doorway. But this beam has to have a certain size to it, so it should be noticeable. How big does it have to be? So Dr. Bryce, koira sha'amru rachva. You know how wide it has to be? Kedei lakabel riach, to be able to hold the half a brick. Right? We know half a brick is a tefach and a half. But the Bryce tells us how much is a half a brick. It's chatzi leveno shel gimel tvach. It's a half of a brick of 3 tvachim. So you see clearly from here that the brick itself is 3 tvachim, and the sid actually makes it bigger. So that's why you don't have a rive in there. Because Hasan beraver vasa. There, the brick that we're talking about is a full 3 tvachim. But our Mishnah might be talking about a brick that's a little bit less than 3 tvachim. You're going to tell me all bricks have the same dimensions? There's no different sized bricks? I'll prove it to you that there are different sized bricks. What does the Bryce say? We are chatzi levena. That's all the information we need. If there's a standard size of a levena of 3 tvachim, but the Tana has to be specific. Chatzi levena, so gimel tvachim. There are bricks that are not exactly gimel tvachim. There must be smaller ones. Shmami no. So therefore, we can still say in our Mishnah that the shear of 5 tvachim includes the layer of sid. Amar Chisda Taras Anu Allah. You're not allowed to knock down the besmedrash for the construction of a new one. Rather, you have to build a new one first and then knock down the old one. Ikadami, there's different reasons why this is prohibited. Either mishum pshiyusa, we're afraid that you'll knock down the old besmedrash, and then there'll be an issue which will prevent us from completing the new besmedrash, and then there'll be no besmedrash at all. The Ikadami, and there are those who say it's mishum tzluye, even if we're not worried about the building being rebuilt, but we do have a concern that where you're going to daven in the meantime. My binai, what's the difference between these two svaris? If there's another besmedrash to daven in, then we're not concerned that there's nowhere to daven in the meantime, but we're still concerned that we're going to lose a besmedrash. We're not going to have it rebuilt. They had seasonal bata midrashim. Ones that they used in the winter, ones that they used in the summer. And Merema Marzutra used to rebuild the summer besmedrash during the winter when it wasn't being used, and they would rebuild the winter besmedrash during the summer when it wasn't being used. So clearly, they held the issue was because they'd be nowhere to daven. What would happen? You're concerned that we were not going to have enough money, we're not going to finish the project. What happens if a govu zuzay umachti? What if they already raised all the money for the project of rebuilding the new besmedrash, and they have it in the bank? So now we don't need to be worried that they won't be able to finish. There's still a problem. You know why? Dr. Rabina, what if a crisis happens? The pidyon shvuyim, they'll use the money that was earmarked for the besmedrash, and they'll use it for the pidyon shvuyim, and now the besmedrash will not get built for Yavalu. Okay, how about Trigi Livni? What if you have a warehouse that you've already purchased skids of block, hudri, and roof trusses, and you have all the beams? All of the building materials are already in the warehouse, ready to go. So there's no concern that I'm going to spend the money. I actually have the actual building blocks. That's still a concern because and you're going to sell the building. You'll liquidate the building materials to come up with the cash for the pidyon shvuyim. In fact, the more if you're going to be so concerned that you always liquidate for the purpose of pidyon shvuyim, ain't the other side. Afilu banunami. Even if once they build the besmedrash, maybe they're going to sell the besmedrash. They'll liquidate the besmedrash to do pidyon shvuyim. Amalei, the Rasei, the Inchi, loy mizhav. If a person doesn't sell his house, pidyon shvuyim, so we don't need to worry that they'll sell a besmedrash for pidyon shvuyim. Zok the Gemara, v'loy amaron elad lechazer batayu. That we say you're not allowed to knock down the besmedrash unless there's another besmedrash built already. That's if there's no danger, there's no structural issues. If there are structural issues, then sasri yubani, you could knock down the besmedrash even before you built a new one. Like the story with Rabashi. He saw that there was a structural issue and it was in danger of collapsing in the besmedrash of Masa Machasya. Sosrei, he knocked it down and then they were going to build. But he still was concerned that they should not be pesheya, they should not be neglectful, and they should make sure they get it built. So you know what he did to motivate them? He actually took his bed and he parked it in the besmedrash, according to Toshus, right out of the besmedrash. So now it's embarrassing. Everyone comes and sees the Rav doesn't have a house. But like Afke, he would refuse to move away from there at the Maskin until the Bismedrish was so completed, the last screw, the last detail was completed on it. There's no hanging wires out of electrical boxes. Everything was 100% in place. Masculine Shvicha means the last eavesdrop was completed, and only then, once the Bismedrish, the new Bismedrish was complete, that's when he was masking to move away. Dr. Gemara, we have a problem. Bava ben Buta, we're going to see, was one of the Chachamim that Hordis, after he killed brutally all of the Chachamim, he left Bava ben Buta alive, and we're going to soon see that the reason why Hordis left him alive is he needed someone to be miyaitu. So the question is, Hordis wanted to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, and Bava ben Buta gave him an eitzah. You're going to first have to knock down this Beis HaMikdash that was built by the Oil Bubble. They didn't have resources, they didn't have money. The Shvacha Beis HaMikdash, knock it down and rebuild a new one. But the problem is, how could he give such an eitzah? Didn't Reb Chisda just say, there might be two reasons why Bava ben Buta would have done it and not be concerned about what Reb Chisda said. Maybe he saw that there were structural issues of the first Beis HaMikdash, not the first mamish, the first version of the second Beis HaMikdash, and therefore he knew we had to cut it down right away. Or Yibayisema, when do you have to worry someone's not going to follow through? That's a regular person. But Machuza, when a king makes a commitment, a public commitment, he'll never renege on it. Shiny. The Lehadrabe. Even if the Malchus commits themselves to uproot a mountain, Akarture, they will do that. Lehadrabe. It's interesting that Hordis needed a much bigger flat area to build his grand Beis HaMikdash on. So what he actually did, he had to grind down the top of the mountain to create a larger flat surface, and he also built up around the mountain on the slope to make it flat. So he actually had to be a shtickle al-Karturi to build the second Beis HaMikdash. So Hordis, did you ever know, do you know where the name Hordis comes from? Where did the name Hordis comes from? Today in the Gemara, we're going to see where his name comes from. So Hordis, Abdu the Beis Chashmonoihab. Hordis was a regular slave by the base Malchus of Chashmonoi. What? I don't know. Ketzadik is an Ishkemein. Nason Einov, he was a pervert, he was a pedophile, he was violent, he was vile, he was brutal, he was a lowlife Shabbat lowlife. Have a Nasan, he was a deviant, he was a sexual deviant. Have a Nasan Einov, Ba'oisai Tenoikis. There was a little girl in the base Chashmonoi who he had a taiva for, a lowlife, a pedophile. So what happened? Yom Echad, one day, Shamahu Gavra. Let's look at what the Bach says. By Shamahu Gavra, the Bach says, Shomei, he heard Labaskol. How he was like to Labaskol because the Rebbe Shalom wanted to do this. And he heard the following. Shamahu Gavra Baskol the Amar, Kol Abda, the Morit Hashda, if a Eved will rebel now, Matlach, today is the day. So he heard us. When he heard us, he rebelled. So Hordis is the name that actually changed him from Evet to Melech, because he heard us. Come Katlinu. That's right. Come Katlinu Lekula Marusa. He went and butchered and violently, brutally murdered the entire Malchus Beis Chashmonoi. V'shaira lahu yinukta. He only left over this little girl. He needed to marry her because then he could now claim fame as a melech, right? If you're an item of a rebbe, you can say you're a rebbe shaynav. Ki chaza hil yinukta the kabbalah mitzvah. When she saw that this monster wanted to abuse her and marry her, she was going to have no part of this. So what did she do? Salika le'igra. She went up to the rooftop and she made the following announcement. She knew that he was trying to claim that he's going to be the king from Beis Chashmonoi. So Varama Kala Varama, she made a huge announcement. Anybody who claims that I'm from Beis Chashmonoi and I know this low life, Hordis is going to do that. I'm telling you right here, right now, Abdu, who's a proste, billige, Eved. How do I know? The lo yishtayra minayu, not one refugee, not one shares a plate that was left over from Beis Chashmonoi, elahi nukta. That's myself. Elahi nukta. You know what's going to happen to me in a second? Naflu my eagle ira. She jumped off the wall and she died. But this sexual deviant, this behemoth, this Russia, this violent pig, was also, I think it's called necrophilia. He also was mezana with dead people. You know what he did? he said, Tamna Sheva Shnin Bedovsha. He put her into a vial of honey. I'm using the word vial because it's VIAL, but it's also a miyas zach, it's a vial. He was mevaza, a body. And whenever he wanted to speak to her, he said, honey, how you doing? Right? That's where it comes from. Right? Ika da Amri, there are those who say, Ba'ala, he was mezana with a dead body, Rachman al-Islam. Ika da Amri, loy Ba'ala. Da Amri la Ba'ala. Then if he was Ba'ala, that's why he preserved her in honey. Hadatamna is liyisuva liyitre, because he needed to fulfill his taiva, the behemoth deviant to what he was. Why would he do it? Why would he preserve a body if he's not going to be with her anyway? He wanted to say, this is my light wife. And he wanted to say, this is my wife, so that he could claim now that he's a Rebbe Shainugel, and therefore he's entitled to the Malchus. Omar, he had a very big problem with somebody who might undermine his Malchus by saying that he's not a Melech, and he's not right to be a Melech. So he undermined the First Amendment. He undermined free speech. Anybody who tried to say something he didn't like, he just eliminated them. Man darish mikerav echecha tosam elach hamelech. Who has the chutzpah to say that only a yid could be a king? Rabbanon. Who the Rabbanon? Kom katlini lekula Rabbanon. He went and shechted brutally all of the Rabbanon. Tosh is not mamish all. There were other shares of Plata besides Bava Bambuta, but Shavke lebava Bambuta lemishko eitzamine. He left him alive so that he will be able to escape. He says, "V'zov knew agit aitzadaf from Fatu benaruv." Anyway, we'll stop here because this is the end of today's daf. And Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow we're going to learn daf Talmud. Beautiful, beautiful mices, but very tragic mices as well. Don't you have a gebenchte, listige Licht begin Shabbos?